Previously. Although obviously watch the first 2 parts if you haven't already. Man, I love staring at my 2 favorite things, a blank YouTube video ideas document and my Family Guy DVD collection. I love those first 3 seasons. I feel like seasons 4 to 6 changed though, and I guess that's why I stopped watching after season 8. Wait a minute. That's it. Finally, I can do something with my life that matters, something that will make a difference. Hold on, season 4 has 30 episodes? The DVD wasn't that big. Oh well. There, I'm finished. Now I can move on to the 3rd and final part. Still can't believe how long season 4 was though. Let me go check my DVD collection again. Here it is, season 4. How do they fit 30 episodes into just one season? It can't be! This isn't my upbeat music playlist. Okay, so basically the UK DVDs don't actually correspond to the original Family Guy seasons. So I was thinking in this video I'd be talking about seasons 7 and 8, which I've seen, and then looking at one season I hadn't seen. But no, this misalignment means the season 8 DVD ends with episode 9 of season 7. Did these 9 episodes show enough decline for me to stop watching the show? Well, no. Family Guy didn't have a rapid decline by any means. As such, even as I went back and watched these episodes knowing I was approaching the point I lost interest, I didn't fully notice it getting bad. Because the decline of Family Guy is not an exciting story. It can be summarized in one word: boring. But not palpably boring. I complained that seasons 4 to 6 saw an increase in jokes that were painfully unfunny. A handful of jokes in seasons 7 to 9 were like that, unfunny and so drawn out it's embarrassing. But this was mostly the era of jokes that just weren't funny. Not unfunny as to assault your senses with cringe, just jokes that make your eyes glaze over and progressively wear down any sense you're even supposed to be laughing at this adult comedy. These weren't even jokes that it made much sense for me to take note of, because my experience of them wasn't that notable. I could tell a joke was being made, but I was not laughing, or smiling, or cringing. I wasn't experiencing anything. I can't exactly highlight any of these jokes I just consider boring. They repeat a few jokes from the earlier seasons, like the Cool Whip joke but about the word ruined instead.
I'm talking about this ruined evening. That's not how you say ruined.
It's not just that they're repeating the joke, they're making it worse. People do enunciate the WH sound strangely in words like whip. Who says ruined? Another one that randomly bothers me is
there anything that doesn't give you a boner, Glenn?
People who use the word rubbish when they mean garbage.
I get the joke is him saying a mundane thing, but wouldn't it make more sense if he said the way British people say rubbish instead of garbage? Because it's only British people who do that. He says it like it's a personal idiosyncrasy that varies from person to person. Okay, look, I get it, you don't care. But the point is there's so many jokes where it's more fun to nitpick the logic behind the wording because the joke itself is so boring. Obviously, I can't communicate to you the experience of sitting there for hours as you binge 3 seasons of an ostensibly comedic show without laughing much at all. And that's annoying because I can point out the occasional jokes that did make me laugh, and I'm going to do that, but I want you to know these were the exceptions. Interestingly, none of the jokes I found especially funny were from cutaways. 0. Fortunately, the show relies on cutaways less in these seasons. I started to notice there being the occasional episodes where there were almost no cutaways at all. The cutaway format is a mixed blessing. The earlier seasons, which are generally regarded as better, had a lot of cutaways, but obviously it's also a format easy to get lazy with, and, well, they clearly got lazy. Not one cutaway joke made me laugh. There were a few meta jokes that made me laugh.
You've seen Family Guy, you know I would.
But my favorite jokes were all sexual for some reason, like when Stewie freaks out after seeing a vagina, and when Peter becomes temporarily gay and has a massive gay orgy, only for the gayness to wear off halfway through. A few good jokes aside, if you want an official definitive answer to why I stopped watching Family Guy, it's that the jokes got boring. My mum is one of my favourite people to watch TV with because she's a giggler, and I know there are some jokes in these 3 seasons that she would crack up at and I'd enjoy the contagious laughter. But I also know that to get to these moments would require sitting in silence at dozens of jokes not landing. That's why I stopped watching Family Guy. A while ago I made a video, you might have seen it. It was about how Family Guy does reference comedy. Since I already made a whole video about it, I don't really need to go over it again, and I'm not going to. Watch the video. But I will say, those specific criticisms really start to apply here. We get a lot more references just for the sake of references, and these are references to films that were already comedies, such that Family Guy is basically just stealing the joke.
Yeah, and sometimes we just steal stuff and put our characters in it.
Oh, okay, they're self-aware now, I guess. The big test for reference comedy is whether there's still a discernible joke even if you don't get the reference. I'm very worldly, so there weren't that many jokes I didn't get. Nonetheless, every reference I didn't get just felt like a massive waste of my time, so it definitely fails the test. Also, in this era they made a lot of jokes against Robin Williams for some reason. Come on guys, what's with the beef? He just wanted to make people laugh. While I'm talking about references though, I want to compare this to a little show called The Simpsons. Season 9 is when The Simpsons' golden era is generally viewed to have ended. I don't think anyone can argue that Family Guy's golden era lasted even close to the end of Season 9. Somebody on my reference humor comparison video accused me of comparing modern Family Guy to classic Simpsons. That's not true. The Simpsons episode I used was from Season 10. Way beyond the classic era, there's a Season 19 episode where Homer goes on a private jet and pursues a high-paying job so he can fly around in his own private jet.
She'll do anything for you. Anything except sex. And I do mean anything.
Oh, I'm aroused and confused.
There's a vaguely similar Family Guy episode from Season 7 where Peter gets to use the executive bathroom and likes it so much he decides he wants a job high up in the company. The big difference is that The Simpsons actually follows through on that storyline and we see Homer's efforts to succeed as an executive. The Family Guy episode introduces this plot, gets a few jokes out of it of varying quality, and then just moves on to something else. So I'm sorry, but even Season 19 of The Simpsons was doing better than Family Guy at this point. Family Guy also just steals some jokes.
These are so easy. It's obviously Tom Hanks.
Oh, Tim Honks, Forrest Gump, I win.
They rip off the worker and parasite joke about Russian cartoons, and also that joke from The Mountain of Madness where the ranger tactlessly makes it obvious he believes the people he's looking for are dead.
All right, everyone, we are officially looking for corpses.
Okay, everybody, put on your corpse handling gloves. We've got 2 frozen bodies buried somewhere in this mountain.
Did you hear that, Lise? Dad's gonna be just fine.
Yeah.
Hey, what's the name of the guy?
Who?
The guy we're looking for.
Who?
The guy who's buried.
Who?
Moving on. Something I've not mentioned, and admittedly something that arguably doesn't matter that much, is how weirdly the seasons as a whole are structured. They'll have 2 episodes running one after the other that completely contradict each other, or they'll do 2 very similar jokes one episode after the other. Probably the weirdest run is when in the space of 4 episodes they do an anthology episode, a flashback historical episode, and a Road 2 episode that also basically functions as an anthology as well because they travel to different universes. It just seems weird to take multiple format-bending episodes and put them so close together in the show's run. This is an incredibly small thing, I realize, but sometimes these small things are what stick out the most. Like they have a whole episode about everybody buying HD widescreen TVs, but for some reason this isn't the episode where the show itself transitions to a HD widescreen format. They also have 3 extra long episodes in these 3 seasons, which annoyed me. I plan out my workload for this channel quite diligently. Suddenly finding out an episode I thought was only 20 minutes long is in fact twice that length really throws things off. And one of those episodes is only 40 minutes long because they add a clip show at the end. What's the point in making an episode longer just by turning it into a clip show? I've complained about the individual plots of each episode before. It still does annoy me how little care they take to have the plot be entertaining, especially when they do something that could be interesting. For example, the time travel episode where they go to Europe during World War II is disappointing. For some reason they quite effortlessly make it all the way from Warsaw to England, only to find out they've got to now fly from England to Berlin to pick up some plutonium. I feel like some fat could have been cut there. Similarly, in the Season 9 premiere, which plays out like a detective story, they don't put much effort into elaborating on the mystery and making it satisfying. They don't slowly introduce subtle clues that Diane could be the murderer. What's the point in doing a mystery episode like this if you're not interested in building up the mystery? Another episode that stands out as uniquely bad is the one where Lois discovers she has Jewish heritage. She initially wants to ignore it, but Peter makes a big deal out of it. Then he starts getting resistant to it, And then Lois decides to start celebrating it. Both characters just randomly change their attitudes back and forth throughout the episode. And the very last episode I watched at the end of season 9 I lost my patience. There's this really boring B-plot about Peter homeschooling the kids that literally goes nowhere. Nothing happens with the episode.
Oh, I don't know. Do you really care, Peter? Does anyone really care?
Yeah, you're right. The story's over.
When plots don't make sense, it makes the few moments of emotional resonance the show tries to have painfully ineffective. I used to complain if the show tried to be funny and failed. Now, the real failure is when it tries to be serious. It usually goes way over the top with the melodrama. It just always feels out of place. A lot of people like the episode where Stewie and Brian have a big heart-to-heart, but I don't. Firstly, it feels as manufactured as it always does when this show tries to be serious. I know they don't really care about characterization or having a deep overarching point. I've seen the show. But also, if my main issue is that these emotional moments often just feel inappropriately tacked on to the rest of the show, it doesn't exactly help that impression when this episode is a conspicuous departure from the typical format. It seems at this point that the show is simply not capable of building up a satisfying plot with any semblance of emotional payoff, or any reason to view each episode as more than just an empty vessel for the occasional good joke. I'm not really going to talk about the Griffin family this time. They just continue with the same dynamic and characterization they've had previously. If I had to mention one thing, it would be that we start to see some cathartic wins for Meg at this point. It's clear that they're already tiring of her as just a punching bag. I've made a joke out of keeping track of how gay Stewie gets as the show goes on. Again though, it's sort of the same as always. Sometimes he's written as gay, but he's also still shown to be attracted to women.
What are you exactly?
Aside from this, the show really doesn't have that many characters. It never became like The Simpsons with dozens of well-known regulars. Instead, aside from the Griffin family, it's pretty much just the gang. Peter's friends. I'm finally going to properly talk about Cleveland. It's not that he gets any more attention in this era. On the contrary, this is where he leaves the show entirely. It's almost noticeable. In the past, I've avoided talking about him because he only has 1 or 2 focus episodes and he doesn't have a very strong characterization. He's very boring. They don't even give him anything to say during the O.J. Simpson episode. His big highlight is the season 7 premiere where he cucks Brian. They also go to see him in Virginia for an episode. Weirdly, they don't have any sort of special episode to coincide with the start of the Cleveland show. Maybe I blinked and missed it, but you don't even notice Cleveland is leaving until he's gone. Quagmire's big change is that they start to introduce more of his softer side. We see his love for cats on display, and also learn he's 61 years old. Both these things are developments not related to his sex criminal behavior. He is still, nonetheless, decidedly a pervert. The big moment for him that has nothing to do with his sexuality is when he's forced to confront an unfortunate reality in the episode Quagmire's Dad. In this episode we get a quite nuanced look at how he struggles to cope with a certain proclivity that I'm sure many of us would struggle to deal with. I'm of course speaking of the horrible reality that one of his parents slept with Brian Griffin. I'm a pretty progressive, tolerant guy, and I'll accept a lot of different lifestyle choices, but I'm not sure I could forgive anybody who would willingly sleep with that complete douchebag. In all seriousness, these episodes and jokes not specifically about Quagmire's sexual conquest do set up the direction this character is slowly heading. Right at the end of season 6, we start to see things go downhill for Joe, especially regarding his relationship with Bonnie. Now we're down that hill. Not only does Bonnie admit to having had an affair before, but the last episode of this era features a plot almost entirely about Bonnie trying to have an extramarital affair. Oh, and Bonnie has sex with Quagmire too. Remember all the way back in season 4 when Quagmire sleeping with a main character's wife was quite a big deal? They also lean into the general idea that Joe's pathetic because of his disability. His most favourable episode is when Meg develops a crush on him, and even that features Peter and Lois relentlessly mocking him.
Oh my God, get over yourself.
Maybe she's prone to quick and severe infatuation.
Yeah, with a dog, not a cripple.
Anyway, that pretty much wraps up on the main gang. Really, with all the characters, it's just more of the same. Of course, there is one specific aspect of characterization that takes a turn for the worse here. At this point, the main characters become a lot less moral, and consequently a lot less likable. Peter's always been a jerk, but he's definitely worse here. There's one event that reflects poorly on the whole family. Peter finds out that Stewie has been horribly injured and helps the kids in blaming it on Lois by throwing Stewie's lifeless body under a moving vehicle. Season 1 feels like a long time ago right now. Obviously, a lot of this immorality isn't taken very seriously. There's even a big lampshading moment for this.
What, you think everyone just forgot about that? There was an investigation, fingerprints, forensic reports. 19 children died, Peter.
Peter's only saving grace is that the writers weirdly draw the line at him cheating on Lois. I say this is weird because, well, Lois would maybe deserve it. Thus far, I've been chronicling how Lois went from a traditional mother who functions as the moral center of the family to fulfilling that role with a little edge. She definitely maintains that edge here, with some interesting revelations about her past. Now though, you can't even argue she has her family's best interests at heart. The worst moment is of course when she cheats on Peter with Meg's boyfriend. That's seriously hurting two people in her family right there. And she doesn't take accountability for it. She blames Peter for not appreciating her enough. The moral vacuum now at the center of the show is another salient example of its decline. I'll also mention Brian under this section. He isn't exactly immoral during these seasons, but he's most definitely a gigantic douche. This is, of course, where Quagmire famously calls out Brian and explains how unlikable he is. With this said, the show really does ramp up his more unlikable traits and even dedicates whole episodes to exploring them. It points out how hypocritical, uninformed, and pointlessly contrarian his politics are in the episode where he suddenly pivots to being a Republican, or his enduringly shallow attitude towards the women he dates. One episode suggests he probably mostly dates dumb women because he likes seeming intelligent by comparison. Of course, in reality, Brian is not smart at all, and is called out for this. When he does write a successful book, it's only because he tries to make it intentionally bad. Honestly, I'm kind of annoyed that they have one episode where he writes an unambiguously good TV pilot, because it confuses his generally consistent characterization as a bad writer. Anyway, Brian's two worst moments in terms of morality are when he flirts with an underage girl, and when he admits to a woman he cheated on her and expresses no recognition this is even a bad thing. I guess it's not surprising Brian is immoral though, since he is an atheist. I'm kidding. I just wanted to pivot to how weirdly outspoken the show got about atheism during this era. Of course, it's not that weird. These seasons were during the peak of the new atheist backlash to Bush Jr.'s evangelical Christian presidency. Sometimes the atheism is presented unfavorably and as being an example of how Brian in particular is obnoxious.
Oh, wait, you don't believe in Jesus Christ, or any religion for that matter, because religion is for idiots.
But obviously the show also takes shots at religion itself plenty. The way it depicts Jesus is pretty blasphemous, although this might be less of an atheism thing and more just Family Guy being offensive. The one scene that really stands out, of course, is...
In this universe, Christianity never existed, which means the dark ages of scientific repression never occurred, and thus humanity is 1,000 years more advanced.
This is a bit of a meme. No, not that meme. This meme. It's an infamously bad meme that actual academics love to make fun of. Obviously, there were incredible scientific advancements during the Middle Ages, and what Europeans were able to do in the 16th century was far more impressive than what they were able to do in the 6th century. Also, how exactly was a Christian Dark Age stopping the Chinese from inventing flying cars? While I'm on the subject of these parallel universes, they go to a universe where America is Japanese, and they specifically describe it as...
This is a universe where the United States never dropped the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, so the Japanese just never quit.
Does anyone else think that's a weirdly specific way of describing it? Not just a universe where Japan won World War II, specifically a universe where Japan won World War II because the US never dropped the atomic bombs, as if dropping the atomic bombs was the only thing preventing complete Japanese victory. I'm not really one for moralizing about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I don't care, but it just seems weird to so specifically word it this way. It almost makes it seem like somebody in the writer's room really firmly believes the bombings were necessary, so insisted this universe specifically had to explain a Japanese victory with the bombs not being dropped. I think that a multiverse episode should really be more about exploring the universes themselves, rather than just a place for writers to air all their personal biases and preferences.
It says that in this universe, Frank Sinatra was never born.
Oh, come on, Seth, that's just ridiculous. Anyway, obviously I don't actually have much to say about the atheism. I just thought it was a unique, recurring aspect of these seasons worth documenting. I always intended for this to be a trilogy of sorts, 3 seasons covered in each of 3 videos. I don't think there's anything to be gained from doing similar videos on seasons 10 to 12, 13 to 15, 16 to 18, so on. These 3 videos tell a complete story, how Family Guy started, how it changed, and how it ultimately ended up. I may do future videos related to the later seasons. One idea is an overview of the best and worst of modern Family Guy. Now is a good time to mention, of course, that you can subscribe if that's of interest to you. But I want to end this series here, not with a conclusion, but with a provocative question. Does this actually matter? To lay my cards on the table, I believe I've been unambiguously documenting Family Guy's decline with this series. I think the early seasons had better plots, better characters, and better jokes. On every level across these 9 seasons, the show has declined. Having said that, I'm saying all this as Casey Reviews, the person making a YouTube video about Family Guy. Making this video has been hard and stressful work. I've had to organize my points, script them out, redraft them, record them, think about what visuals to include, compile those visuals, and move them all into place. There is a different Casey Reviews who is worth acknowledging. The Casey Reviews who got to sit down and just watch Family Guy on his own. Yes, most of the time I was staring at it vacantly and getting very little from it, but honestly, that didn't bother me, and occasionally I did have some good laughs. Nowadays, a lot of people probably watch Family Guy either through random clips on YouTube, or else through those very long clips of full episodes that are heavily edited such that they'd be unwatchable if you're watching a show you really cared about. But that's the thing. Nobody cares about Family Guy now. The corners are so obviously cut in terms of writing and animation that the whole show just gives off an energy of carelessness. Maybe there's actually a place in the world for a show like that. I liked early Family Guy. However, with TV shows, it's inevitable they'll get to this point if they go on long enough. Something about these later seasons feels like a dignified retirement. It's almost comforting. I stopped watching Family Guy because I got bored, because I felt like the show didn't care about being consistently funny or making me care about its characters and story. Funny thing is, if I continue to watch it going forward, it will ultimately be for that very same reason. I hope you enjoyed this look at these 9 seasons of Family Guy. Let me know what you think below and make sure to subscribe for my future projects. A big thank you to everybody who's been part of this channel's growth so far. Goodbye.